Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good evening. Good evening to all.
Good evening.
Excellent, excellent. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session of your Certified International Risk Management course here with the Bahamas Institute of Financial Services in partnership with Charter Bank in Scotland. You should have had the privilege of meeting some of my other colleagues for modules 1 and 2. Was module 1 just with Keith Checkley and 2 with another, or were they both with Keith?
Module 1 with Mr. Keith Checkley, and module 2 was with Mr. Hill.
Mr. Higgs. Okay. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, for the benefit of those that have not had an opportunity to review, refresh, re-energize, just perhaps not properly placed for modules 1 and 2, let's sort of talk about that, right? Let's recap 1 and 2. So modules 1, you should have touched on some of the fundamentals of risk management, Basel Committee, regulatory constructs. You should have then transitioned into credit, behavioral scorecards, governance, conformance, qualitative and quantitative approaches to risk management. And landed and really had a soft landing, so to speak, from this altitude of what this thing is all about to what it means to you, right? So before we dive into module 3, let's talk about module 1. Certainly, anyone is open to share their views. I like an engaging session. As with most things, what you put in is what you get out. We are all working professionals in our own respects. And so the true value proposition of our sessions is for you to engage at the level that will not only assist you in the design of either enterprise risk management within your environment, hone the skills that you need for a risk manager, and I will qualify that a little later. And just more importantly, understand really how to navigate this thing called risk management. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Modules 1. Feel free to share. What did you learn? What are some questions you have? And we'll go then to modules 2 and 3 respectively. So modules 1. Anyone? Just floor is open. We don't necessarily have to have the videos up. I completely understand. Some of you may be in commute. Some of the environments may not be palatable, so that is perfectly fine. What is important is that we get the value out of our time and we have engaging discussions along the subject matter. So, module 1, what do we got? Any takers?
Hi, hi, Indira Woodside. You can hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Well, generally, I understand that for the framework, there are 3 pillars, which are capital requirement, pillar 1. Pillar 2 is supervisory review, and pillar 3 is market discipline. However, with credit risk, the measurement for credit risk, basic, intermediate, and advanced. Could you go over that, please? The 3 basic calculations for credit risk.
So I'll put that in a parking lot. So you're talking about basic indicator, standardized approach, and the advanced measurement approach.
Correct.
For Basel, right? So those are good points. So really you're focusing more primarily on some of the fundamental constructs within Basel, right?
Right.
Okay, so good. I'm gonna put that in a parking lot, and we're gonna come back to that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Was there anything else outside of what you shared?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Is it Indira?
Yes.
Thank you, Indira. Anyone else? So I know in the Bahamas, we tend to not really communicate well on these Zoom meetings and things, but that's not going to be in my sessions. So let's just sort of make up our minds that we're going to talk, right? So we can do it voluntarily, or I can just sort of call names, right? And appreciate that what you will find is the risk management practitioner is bold, right? There's a degree of professional audacity and fortitude within the discipline. You are measuring uncertainty. So where there is uncertainty, there's no policy, there's no procedure, there is no process, there is no framework. You are working in an environment that is mostly founded on professional judgment, right? And so this is why when a risk practitioner is in the room, it should invoke an engaging discussion. The risk practitioner their function within the constructs of second line of defense is supposed to provide oversight, which means you have a degree of professional aptitude, you have the competency, you have the technical experience and exposure, otherwise you won't be in oversight. And you really need to sort of provide a guide within the policies and procedures, because why would you need a supervisor or a manager or even a board member, anyone at the executive level, if what you experience in the day-to-day is within the policy and procedure? You need someone that supports judgment. You need a group of people. You need this suite, so this risk management suite, to cover judgment. So we've had the privilege of Ms. Indira, who would have shared Basel. I'm sure there is much, much more to be discussed on the subject matter. Modules 1 and 2 has a great degree of depth in terms of the fundamentals of the course. So I'm very, very surprised that there isn't much to share. So we're not watching a movie, guys. So let's talk. Modules 1, I open the floor again.
Good evening.
Hey.
My name is Helga Cummings. I've been doing some reading over the weekend using the manual that I was given. But as far as trying to keep up with the studies, because I'm trying to keep everything in order, the pages seems to not be numbered correctly. And it's almost like it's a back and forth. So it's hard for me to actually, I feel as if I don't have a proper structure. Because like I heard the lady just now speak on module 1, and I'm not seeing that. Like I'm seeing the 3 pillars from Basel 3, pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, but because of the numbering of the pages, it's very hard to follow everything precisely. It's almost like I'm going back and forth, and it's making it difficult for me to be able to keep up.
So Helga, what type of work do you do?
I'm an accounting officer at Scotia Wealth Management.
Oh, Scotia's in the house. Okay, great.
Yes.
What is your thoughts on what a risk manager is?
Can you repeat that?
What are your thoughts on who or what a risk manager is or does?
My thoughts on a risk manager is someone that would make sure that we have proper controls in place, that the company is following proper policies and procedures according to regulation and according to not just country law, but international standards. Also, someone that makes sure that the bank is acting within its risk appetite and we're not taking on any risk that the bank may not be able to suffice in like clients or any particular investments and so on.
So I'm going to make that a multiple choice question just for you because I thought that was very comprehensive. What was the reference material you were reading from?
This is a manual that I got from BIF's. Credit skills.
No, I meant when you answered the question.
I didn't read from anything. I just said what I just answered the question.
So of course. So the view here, right, is firstly, I need to impress upon everyone that the course is not limited. Your materials are not limited to what was provided, right? You are encouraged to research and certainly supplement the information. So we're going to go through some of those, I would say the consolidated grouping of information, which would have been sent. Now, I'm not going to cover every single element of it, but I'm hoping that that should sort of help with the, I guess, bring context to your question and some of the concerns. We could also take it offline to ensure that you get the files. But what I would say is, I think if I remember correctly, you should have had 3 weeks in modules 1 and 3 weeks in modules 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you should have had about 6 weeks. So what I would encourage is, we are, again, working professionals. This is a session of our own Bahamian colleagues. Some I know of which may be in regional in context. So let's share information, reach out and touch someone, right? So at this point, either everyone in this particular session should have already had some type of WhatsApp group, an email group, something where you're in constant contact with. And again, I know some persons may not be comfortable, but the reality is a lot of this sort of administration and housekeeping matters, like, they could be addressed before we get in sessions. So let's try to leverage more of our team. I'd like to call it a risk management team, right? And this is not just for Helga, guys, it's for everyone. What you will find is, as you are working in the normal course of business, these are some of the same individuals that you may need to leverage to support, either, as Helga mentioned, the design of policies and procedures, effectiveness measures. You may just have a question. You may not have had the opportunity of a precedent case when you're dealing with certain operational constraints and challenges and key, critical, complex issues that you face, right? So no man is an island. Let's leverage as much as we can, right? So Helga, as we go through, I hope that is helpful for you in terms of touching the points of interest.
Okay.
Great. All right, anybody else? So what I find interesting is, whenever we have these sort of sessions, some persons, by the time we get to module 3, we were talking about going through concepts in 1 and 2. So everyone is an expert in modules 1 and 2. I take that as a yes.
No, sir. No, sir. Like she said, my name is Orlando. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Orlando Dean, and I am new to risk management. I spend most of my time in policing. I was trying this out to better myself and to learn some things about the financial status of the country. So I said, let me take this course. But as she said, I read the manual, and for some reason or the other, it's more like a PowerPoint presentation. It would appear, the manual. But, yeah, and certain concepts, I haven't really got down pat with him. So I tried to.
What type of work you do, Orlando?
I was a police officer.
Well, specifically within the force.
Okay, I was in the control room for the most part in Grand Mama.
Yeah, Grand Lucayan.
Yeah, Grand Lucayan. Now I'm at the Grand Lucayan Hotel.
Yes. How are things in Freeport?
Well, Freeport, it looked like it's picking up. Look like it's picking up. And I got to stay optimistic. Like the thing to get better. But
What do you think is needed to stimulate the economy in Freeport?
well, to stimulate, for me, I believe that we need some investors, but we need some Bahamian investors also, not just foreign investors. We need Bahamian investors to help stimulate the economy. And then the Port Authority, some of those licensing fees are just too high. And the electrical bill, like when you have manufacturing countries, the electricity bill is, it's very high. So some of them, because of the high prices, they tend to pack up and leave.
Mm.
Yeah.
So if we were to sort of single out the sort of stimulus industry or a sector of business that really keeps Freeport alive, which one of those would you say it is?
Well, so far we have right now, it was the container port that was really sustaining Freeport for a long time. Container port and the shipyard. And yeah, for the most part. But tourism, we need tourism to bounce back so that we can see the money or feel the money. So the
Right.
money could move about.
So shipping, trade, etc. Right?
Yes.
So let me see here now. Let's see here. I think Mr. Randy Taylor. Randy.
Hello?
Randy, all is well?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
I'm sorry, did we get a cyber attack? This is Randy.
Well, I could hear both you. I could hear both you and Randy,
Hello?
but it's,
Randy. We can hear you, Randy.
I can hear you, my internet. Hello?
Randy, you're breaking up. Randy, we can come back to you, Randy. We can come back to you, Randy.
Having some difficulty with my internet connection?
Yeah, you're having some operational risk. We can deal with you later, Randy. So let's sort that out, and then we'll come back to you, okay? Okay, so we were talking about Freeport, and we were talking about at the end of the day, we have certain economies of scale within business segments within Freeport, but then largely also in the Bahamas and in the respective islands. There's a lot of things happening, as we know, and when we think about really the true stimulus, it starts with the mindset, right? Confidence supports or undergirds the scale or market scale of any industry, right, or business segment. So then you kind of have to think about what is going to be the flow of money, investments, and how does it really touch the home of every consumer? How does it provide a support for the soundness and buoyancy of our overall economy? And at the end of the day, what you have to think about is the reality that risk management undergirds all of this. We have to consider really a plan. We have to consider at a corporate level to run firstly our country as a business and really look at the areas of specialization the areas of particular interest to the peripheral global environment, and certainly what we are able to really produce at a level that supports financial buoyancy. So I know that there is a little work being done in the digital asset space. And for some, there's skepticism, and for others, a great opportunity. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the DARE Act and digital assets in general, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, what's been going on in the market, right? And again, we're going to sort of bounce back and forth between concepts, and the reality is you don't want to miss it, right? So digital assets, is it here to stay? Is it something viable for us? Is it really the second tier, or I would say rather the more buoyant tier to really navigate what we believe are shocks, like supply chain constraints, climate risk. We have this protracted pandemic. Definitely, we have a lot of other vulnerabilities. We have the Great Resignation. We have a lot of decoupling of risks that can certainly cause a domino effect in our traditional way of business. So let's talk about it. Digital assets. Digital assets. Brea.
Mr. Williams,
Hi.
sorry, you could pick on Bria. No, I just wanted to say, this is Donald Jones.
Hey, Donald, what do you say?
Everything is good, man. I just wanted to say that in terms of the digital space, that's the main reason I actually took this course. I've been in risk now for 20 years, and risk is always changing. And so I recognize that right now, the banks are moving towards digitalization, data mining, and that's a new sort of management. It's also, in my mind, a lot higher risk when you start dealing in the digital space, because you're not dealing with geeks all over the world trying to break your codes and so forth.
Right.
And so from where I sit, the digital space is here to stay. The Bahamas, believe it or not, has been on the forefront of a lot of revolutionary historical data, going back from Columbus, bootlegging. We've always been a part of change when it comes to global economies. So I think that the digital space is here to stay. Persons on this course, I think, is a good course to be on, because it's going to allow you to think very widely in terms of risk. It's good and bad for those who are just getting into risk management. You become kind of scary sometimes. You become adverse to doing a lot of things, because everything you do has a risk element to it. And so from where I sit, risk management is an excellent program that covers any sector. And I also just told my team the other day that when the rest of the organization start loving you as the risk manager, you're doing something right. Because the risk is always
becomes a risk.
So you have to recognize that as a risk manager, people will not always want to hear what you have to say. Unlike on the business side, when they're telling you the good stories, the risk manager is going to come and say, yeah, it's going to rain tomorrow, cancel the fair, right? Or not cancel a fair, but buy a tent in case it rains. So risk management, mitigation, I think it's going to be a fun course once we make it fun. Thanks.
Thanks, Donald. You know, you touch on so many critical points of interest here. I mean, the value proposition is just reeking, right? And that's really what it is. It's a new paradigm shift in the professional designation. The world at large is experiencing so many changes rapidly that we can no longer really adjust. So what am I saying? The degrees of volatility, right? And the propinquity of risk, when we think about likelihood of impact and just navigating all of the challenges. And again, it's not just all bad, right? When we look at risk reward, relationships, cost benefit, risk-based decisions, the point here is you have to have someone that is properly advising the captain of the ship. And I want to say that again. The risk management profession is about sound judgment of critically advising the captain of the ship, your corporate governance, your board members, of course, your C-suite, for those that have the C-suite, your senior level executives, right down, cascaded to the senior managers, staff, seniors, etc., right? You need to be able to constantly challenge what is in place. And as Donald mentioned, when you become friends, or when you become so comfortable in your role that persons, like, you have this rapport, because we all believe in having an excellent professional rapport, but there's a thin line, right, between separation of duties, and we all talk about it, because you don't want to impair your independence and objectivity, right? You have to be in a position that allows the line to be drawn in the sand and never, and I seriously state, never crosses over. You will not be well favored in most instances, but I can guarantee you, this is the guarantee. When the stuff hits the fan, when you incur those contingent events, those disruptive business elements that persons are now able to either have a guide that you would have created, or the soundness of your advice, hopefully, from an early prevention and detective posture, allows for I would say, manageable course into buoyancy. You will have the respect. You will have the rapport. Everyone just has to be challenged, right? Module 1 touches on Basel, and it really gives Basel in the framework of the 3 pillars. You have to see yourself as a pillar of strength, a pillar of proficiency, competency, and ultimately a pillar that remains agile. All of this encompasses in your judgment. You have to read daily and across all subject matters. So when I hear a person talk about, oh, I'm a risk and compliance professional, I just cringe, right? Because it's a nice buzz combination, but the two doesn't always sit in the same space. Risk complements compliance, and conversely, it's the same. You have within Basel the constructs of capital, market risk, operational risk, credit risk. Why is that important? That's important because the very first piercing impact to your business is within in your capital corpus. So asset quality is something that you have to always think about. And what are the assets of your business, right? Brea, what are the assets of your business?
Good afternoon. Well, for the business that I'm involved in, part of it would be our loan portfolio.
Okay. Can from the viewpoint of your loan portfolio, what are the assets of your portfolio?
Mortgages, consumer loans, commercial loans, credit cards, overdrafts.
Okay. Can you think about any other tangible constructs within the framework of your portfolio as an asset?
Of the loan portfolio or just assets of the bank?
Either or, loan portfolio or assets of the bank. Ultimately, they should be assets of the bank.
I don't, maybe,
Don't worry, it's okay. You can get it right or you can get it wrong. I just want you to give an effort. Does anybody want to help her out? Shante?
I would say people.
Exactly. You got people.
People asset.
You got people, you got systems,
Buildings,
you
yeah.
got processes, you have the customers, right?
Mhm.
You have the actual design of the products. You have your intellectual property. You have
Reputation.
all of the, yes,
Physical
all
property,
of these.
buildings.
So all of these become the true asset of your book of business, right? The goodwill, as Donald pointed out, is an asset, right? This is the reputation. This is why there's a gravitational pull towards certain segments of your business, right? Based on concentration of your business. You may be heavily weighted on the mortgage side, or you may be heavily weighted on the consumer side. And that's how you know the risk-weighted asset distribution then qualifies asset quality, which then ultimately translates into how you distribute assets. And if you know where your assets are concentrated, then you know where business, critical thinking needs to be focused. Do you focus on the area of business that is heavily concentrated in terms of your risk-weighted assets, or do you focus on what is less concentrated in terms of your focus on quality of assets? Question for the floor.
It would have to be a good night, everyone. I'm assuming it would have to be a balanced approach, but priority would still need to be given to the area where you're heavily concentrated, because that's your greatest exposure.
So you had me when you started off with balanced approach. I loved it. And then you put me back in the corner, focusing on the risk concentrations. Help me with this state of complexity. I want to work this through. Why would you say that?
I mean, it's like a house, right? You want to make sure God, the front door, the back door, and all the windows. So you have to be vigilant of all the necessary vulnerabilities. That's why I initially said a balanced approach. However, in certain areas, unfortunately, you have to pay more attention to. So again, if I'm the man of the house, the first is if I realize that there may be a risk where my treasures are, i.e. my family or whatever else, that's the first thing I'm going to go to protect. I'm going to always listen out for a particular vulnerabilities in that particular sector or that particular area, because that's where I'm heavily vested. Now, obviously, from a business perspective, you want to have, I guess, a diversified portfolio and what's not, because being heavily concentrated, that in itself is a risk. I think that's where I'm headed. Not sure if I answered your question.
No. Red, is that Red? Is it Richmond?
Yeah, it's Richmond.
Rithman. That's the interesting name. Okay, Rithman. Yes, Rithman. That is a very unique perspective, and I can definitely align myself with that. So I share your sentiments on the balanced approach. I want to draw your attention to the use of the word risk-weighted assets, because we are talking about Basel, Pillar 1, and capital corpus. So from a best practice regulatory Basel perspective, it's always important to put this sort of suite together whenever you talk about legislative constructs. So risk-weighted assets is a base, and its volatility. Trust that there's no volatility. It could either give rise for concern, or it can give you perspective on how to redeploy working capital to support either better footing for your financial assets, both tangible and intangible, or it can give you perspective on how you can better deploy so you can have a stronger return on investment, so your ROI. So the balanced approach from the risk-weighted assets perspective, and again, taking foundationally our capital in focus, we do want to appreciate what are the operational vulnerabilities, potential risk exposures. But there is an element of risk that focuses on income generation. And not very many people talk about it, but we will toggle back and forth depending on the subject matter. So you want to view here that when you look at asset quality, concentration of your assets, you want to first be able to appreciate, right? What is the degree of effectiveness in terms of the organization's true ability to navigate some of its potential areas of vulnerability, right? Let me say that in a different way. When we look at risk, when we look at asset quality concentrations, have we properly designed policies, procedures, operational frameworks, front-end customer product services, delivery channels, the full asset architecture? Have we designed it to be resilient? Have we designed it keeping in mind what is emerging, what is forward-looking, what are some of the potential vulnerabilities? If we have designed it, then it's a measure of regularly or periodically testing effectiveness. And we don't, as risk professionals, we don't just test effectiveness to ensure that we're checking the box. Oh, it's working. The control is working. What we are looking for is the window of opportunity, or the spread between risk and reward. So third line of defense, internal audit, will say, oh, I have this scope, I need to look at this, I need to make sure that it's operating within its constructs. Okay, great, you can do that. And their frequency is a little different from risk management. Risk management says, I have a concentration of assets. And to the point Richard made, do I have a systemic risk relative to concentration such that I need to diversify? And you could diversify your pricing, you could diversify your overall offering to the customer. And again, we're just talking about the loan portfolio. You can look at your marginal utility of time spreads for level of return. So your payback period parallel to your matching of your assets. And we look at the ability of the organization to assess the dollar value opportunity for new growth. So what do I mean? The maturity of time between loan adjudication and payback, final payback period or final settlement of the arrangements. There is a cyclical opportunity for reinvestment of return. The reinvestment of return based on the spread. So there should be a value at risk and a value at opportunity. The value at risk is what we factor into our interest rates. This is something that I know that we are all familiar with. So there's a certain risk profile with the customer based on age, demographics, years of service, length of period of time, the amount borrowing, these kind of things between application and behavioral scorecard. But there's also the value of opportunity or value of opportunity, where you have a certain amount, you either can have it priced into your product or you can have it within a pair grouping of products or a pair group where you assess based on the maturation of payback, you have a residual value or aggregate amount that you can reinvest. That amount can be a exploratory type of investment, like we started talking about digital assets. So where there is uncertainty, we know there's a proportionate degree of higher risk and ultimately a potentially higher level of return because you could price it in. The market factor these kinds of things in because this is your entry to market. Your entry to market, which means the value of time, and we know with the value of time, there is cost of living adjustment, and depending on your early entry, midpoint, or late entry, that's how you align either a symmetrical or asymmetrical value of opportunity. So risk concentrations, or rather asset quality concentrations, should be viewed by the risk practitioner for observing value at risk. So is there a risk, and I'm just talking about loan portfolio, is there a risk of default? We're familiar with this. But also, is there a value of opportunity, right? So I want to rest that there. And that is symmetrical to the concept of capital. So the risk-rated assets will have an inverse relationship to the value of opportunity, naturally. Because this is the value that you're able to redeploy or reinvest to support sustainability or some of the vulnerabilities that you assess. Every control weakness has a corresponding proportionate outcome of a corrosive or a corrosive impact on your assets. So when there's a control weakness, what happens? Systems break down. Human infrastructure is impacted. There's loss of dollar value. There's loss of business value, market presence, market concentration. And so when you think about all of these concepts, you position risk-rated assets to really support risk-based decisions. So the risk-based decision is, where's my opportunity? You don't want to be in your organization sounding like a police officer, sounding like the next organic transition to internal controls or internal audit, right? Or you just came from an auditing firm and now it's all about policies and procedures. It's a balancing act. And so Rich touched on that, right? But today, we're taking it further. It's an act of opportunity. So you risk assess for, yes, effectiveness on controls, but you risk assess for opportunity. The opportunities that we are familiar with are streamlining of functions. So I moved from 10 steps to 6 steps, or I moved from 10 steps to 4 steps. And we know from a qualitative perspective, there are natural constraints which impair streamlining of functions. It could be competency of resources. You can have legacy operating systems. You may have a training and development curve. You may have a culture that just is challenged with change. I don't like to touch that because I think in the Bahamas, when we use the word change, it usually stimulates the war between legacy staff and new entrants or the millennials. And I tend to shy away from that, primarily because the conversation tends to lose focus. So there's this emotional trigger. Oh, I'm not old. Oh, I've been here for a long time. Oh, you just reached in the past. So you further risk assess beyond controls. You risk assess where you can say, perhaps I can optimize my financial output or my income generating ability by looking at full-scale use of my core banking, full-scale use of certain applications. It's nice to have the Mercedes of applications or the Teslas of applications. I like Tesla's, by the way. It's very nice. And Lexus. Lexus is nice too. So it's good to have all the buttons, right? All the lights and the buttons and everything, but are you using them? So one of the risk assessments of opportunity, because then you might ask, how do you risk assess opportunity? You risk assess opportunity from highlighting the weakness and treating the weakness. And the treatment should speak to improvement of the environment, improvement of the process. So we move from a 5.0 scale, from a reputable IBM, Apple, these global international organizations, to one that is just local. They don't have the reach, they don't have the scale, it's just regional. But you know what? It's enough for us to get the job done. It has SOC assessments from reputable accounting firms and credible independent assessment consulting companies, and they support effective economies of scale. Makes sense, right? So I don't spend $1 million on systems and say, oh, I have the Teslas of the world. No, let's not use Tesla. I like Tesla. We're not using the IBM system because we have the mainframe back in and the database back in Switzerland somewhere, although we've never been to Switzerland, and because of the lockdowns can't go anywhere anyway. Or it's somewhere in Ghana and we never see it, right? Or you spend 100,000, save 900,000, invest in the system that you need, and now you have value of opportunity of 900,000 in, firstly, a tangible asset. Your intangibles are your training and development. I don't need to train these people in a complex systems. They don't need to be certified. They don't have to travel to go and meet all of these different people that really don't have nothing to do with their function, because we use, the conferences as a vacation trip. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but that's a reality sometimes. And, because when people come back and they talk more about the city itself as opposed to the value of the conference, web-based conferences just make sense, right? Another risk of opportunity. So Richmond, you were right. Balancing act, balance risk and reward, balance value proposition. We get into capital and we want to optimize our return on investment. We want to have the working capital to support scale, to support innovation, to support research and development, and strengthen the income generating ability of the staff themselves, right? Who says that our salary has to stay the same? Do you know, like, when you get certified within, of course, the concentration of your discipline, you really have, that value add, right? Depending on your personality, right? So I find it interesting too when you look at individuals who have so many certifications. That's a point. Let's talk about that. How much is enough? Like, is it the attractive thing to just have a whole lot of unrelated certifications? I mean, the obvious answer is you want to be concentrated in the same discipline, or perhaps complementing disciplines. But sometimes I get confused, right? Because I see this sort of flip-flopping going on these days. Let's Alexandra, could you tell me something about the certification thing? Because I just need to understand that just a little, if you don't mind. Just your sentiments. So,
I think sometimes people just like the idea of having these certifications. Maybe it's attractive, or maybe to themselves, and it makes themselves look a little better on paper, should I say?
I just don't get it. I just think
Well, I remember conducting an interview. Good evening, sorry. Still in.
Darcy, yeah, go ahead.
I remember conducting an interview, and I was speaking with the interviewee, and I asked certain questions of, I saw this particular person, they did similar certifications, and I asked, what was your intention and what is your objective and using those certifications? What is the objective? And they couldn't give me a clear-cut answer. But in my opinion, when I looked at the certifications, they, for whatever job they were going for, it achieved the same objective.
Right.
The courses were almost like identical. Sorry?
Sorry, are you in HR?
For me, you asked me if I'm in HR? No, I'm in compliance.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Okay. All right. So you got me there, Darcy. So
I know why you asked the question, though.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? To me, after you've gotten the cert, right? And I have to qualify when I say the cert, because everyone chases the highly accredited and popular cert. But I mean, after maybe like a foundational one and then perhaps an advanced, maybe one or two, if the other one goes into something else, but not, 4, 5, 6 in the same discipline, I think you are becoming a professional of absolute diminishing returns. Like, you are no longer of value to yourself, because there's a concentration risk. To your point, Richmond, there's a concentration risk, and some may do, oh, I'm a subject matter expert, but that's not it, right? That's not it. Today, the subject matter expert is about your experience and exposure in the discipline, complemented with an integrated view of complementary professionals, right? Or complementary disciplines supported by those professionals. So hence, you have more collaborative engagement in the work environment today than ever before. Nobody just works in a silo anymore. That just doesn't happen. The degree of complexity requires a cognitive position on different views, and that's just what it is today. Jessica, you wanted to say something?
Hi, yes, good evening. I chuckled when you talked about that. So, and I know you mentioned the digital asset space, right? And so there's a lot of, if you look at LinkedIn, a lot of people doing all these certs, and somehow, I mean, there's so many letters behind the names now I can't keep up, but is the sentiment still the same for a new emerging space now, like digital assets? Perhaps getting a number of certs is necessary, because the space is changing so quickly, and then for a lot of persons who are not in that space, they have to, and they're trying to get into that space, it may make a little sense. Now, of course, I'm not meaning over concentration, but a few. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
You have to remain marketable, because everything is always evolving and changing. So sometimes it's necessary to get an additional certification, just so that at any point in time, your employment is secure. You could easily adapt. The main thing is that when you're getting the certification, that you learn skill sets that are easily transferable. I think that's the risk. The risk is if you're doing certification in different industries that does not complement one another, then obviously you're just wasting money. But if you're learning skill sets that can complement and are easily transferable and or adaptable in different industries, it works. Even everybody talk about this cryptocurrency, that's going to be my next certification. I want to learn it because I know that's where the industry is headed.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Well, I know for the digital asset space, and I am keen on getting certified in that space as well, is understanding it. You spoke, Jermaine, you spoke about the risk associated with that particular business, volatility and so forth and so on. I actually worked with a digital payments company, which is not the same. However, in this space, in this environment, in this regulatory environment in the Bahamas, even then, and this was just maybe 3-4 years ago, the understanding of that and how that should move, particularly in the compliance space, was not understood. So I would encourage somebody to do that in the crypto space, to understand what they're saying and understanding what being made to manage from a risk perspective or a compliance perspective or a business perspective, as opposed to just jumping in it just because it's the popular trend.
I like those views. Those views are really on the precipice of what I believe is cutting edge. So you get these certifications, and of course we're talking about the ones who leverage the diversified certs for being marketable, and then of course it being transferable, right? I like those points. In fact, so Rich, you were spot on. Jessica mentioned about new and emerging markets. So I applaud anyone. I have a few certs myself in the digital asset space. And so I understand the need to really just appreciate what that space is all about. I do agree there is a perspective on value proposition, but what I wanted to come out most in our discussion is the true value. See, the worst practitioner looks at this, the value. After you get it, what do you do with it? Are you waiting to receive instructions? Or are you going to design something that makes sense? So in the digital asset space, don't tell me you're just trying to explore. If you're just trying to explore, go on a safari, right? Like go on a European tour of some kind, because value of time is precious. Your value at risk is such that you're losing propensity within an area that perhaps you may already be a subject matter expert, right? I would be afraid if a doctor's telling me after he's done his checkup, or she, I prefer it to be a she, if they're telling me that, listen, I'm thinking about compliance and risk. What do you think about that? Really? So in the emerging markets, right, like a digital assets, you want to look at the true value of any cert. And again, we're still keeping it in view of risk management. It's about the value proposition on what you bring to the table. Yes, there's the compliance aspect. And I think overnight, everyone became a compliance expert in digital assets for some reason. It's the safe path. What about the engineering aspects of it? What about understanding the elements of a cryptocurrency or a digital token or a digital asset? And again, I don't want to confuse the concepts because there's a complete difference between digital assets or digital currency and cryptocurrency, right? So one is backed, and primarily one is backed by fiat currency. That's your digital currency or your stable coins, right? And then you have your cryptocurrency that's not backed by any true fiat or comparable level of asset securitization synonymous to what we know in our equity bond markets, what we know about, our fixed income securities. These are the things that we know. Now some things happened recently, and when I say recently, in the most recent 2-3 weeks, there was a major crash within the cryptocurrency space. And so it created this bear market, which plunged consumer confidence. And so I'm sure you would have heard everyone talking about the depreciation in the Bitcoin and Ethereum and the like. The reality is that didn't move me at all. Because as a risk professional, one of the things that I look at is if you follow the fundamentals of an asset, you understand its makeup, you understand its purpose, how it's scaled, how it generates ROI, what is its life in terms of your operating environment or the global environment, then it becomes a value of opportunity to invest in a bear market. Today, we've seen almost like the complete opposite. So we have a bull market, almost not quite a bull run, but a bull market. So the price is slowly, like, it's gingerly getting to a place where consumer confidence has somewhat been restored. But investors are all calling for regulation. And it's really about, okay, I need to make sure that someone is managing these assets from their risk of volatility, from the risk of me losing my level of returns, even though you really should be investing in these kinds of markets with disposable income, not reallocation of gross income, right? Because otherwise, you're setting yourself up for increased risk assets or increased value at risk. So your value of opportunity is really your disposable income. So what is the net available amount that I could transfer to run symmetrical with a risk reward? Everybody is always happy when you're making money. Great. Awesome. You might tell a friend or you may not. It all depends on culture. But when you see a bear market and the prices are plunging, oh, you don't want to have your balance sheet in that place. So markets are about sensitivity, volatility. You have propinquity of risk that, again, it runs proportionate based on asset quality. We touched on that earlier. So when I look at, again, professional designations, I then look at, well, what is going to be my underlying asset based on the designation? Because the designation is managing the asset. So what is that? That's compliance, that's internal audit. So there's not much in the trade and investment space. So we're seeing an emergence, new opportunities there. A second point, that's what the risk manager looks for. I look at concentration, we look at concentrations, and we look at where is the next opportunity. So the Basel framework is all about how do you protect your financial architecture? How do you protect your balance sheet? I got 3 pillars that demonstrate to you how to protect it while you explore new opportunities. That's for the risk manager to think, right? So an earlier question was raised by Indira about basic indicator approach and the standardized approach and advanced measurement approach, and we will get there. I have not forgotten it. Now, before I continue, what time do you typically end your session? Are we still connected? Hi.
The first class we had on Wednesday, so I don't know.
Yeah, this is the first evening session for this certification. But
Oh,
I know normally with other certs, the evening classes would run like 2.5 hours or so.
2.5 hours or so. Okay. Anyone else have any views? Because I'm sure I'm feeling the sense of eyebrows raised right now. What is Richland talking about? Can somebody compliance?
Shorter the better.
Okay, so let's do it like this.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, and I would like to get the best out of it. So I mean, as much as you can fit in, because we all here for a reason. But I know I do have some other obligations.
Oh yeah, most deaf. So what we want to do, right? What we want to do is we want to optimize time. And we want to be able, so we can achieve this in 2 ways. One, you read, you share, and I help to implement concepts to help you align with the subject matter. I will also help you to address your, I believe there is a paper. So we will address the paper, and I will help you prepare for your multiple choice exam. Sounds like a plan, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Helga,
let's do that.
Helga, I thought you was going, Helga.
No, I'm listening. No, I'm listening and I'm taking notes. And you know, I have been reading this module and studying it very, very closely. And I think with you going over what we just went over just now, it just gave me a clearer understanding as to what I have been reading, and it's not as bad as I thought it was, and I'm not doing as bad as I thought I was doing.
Helga.
Yes.
You know as a risk professional, right?
Well, I just found this out today.
You know you can't sell that stuff to me. I understand you, we can sort you out. Don't worry. We got Darcy, and what we don't get sorted out, I sure we can get Dean to organize everything else.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, man, we can organize it. We can organize it. And everything emergent, Jessica gonna handle that.
Thank you so much.
So what we got? So we got used to the chat. What we got? Okay, Darcy. Yep, that's what we got going on. Okay. Any questions so far? That was a lot of concepts.
Can we form a WhatsApp group, please?
Okay. So guys, y'all could sort that out. Y'all have everybody's email, right? I think. So
Yeah, I think
Darcy.
I think Darcy is good at sending stuff. I don't know if I'm volunteering Darcy, but
Darcy.
Compliance.
Oh
Yep. Compliance.
I don't mind. I don't mind.
Compliance.
but yeah, but before Indira asked about the WhatsApp, I had a comment. I'm Mr. Williams. And I agree with Helga. I agree with Helga with her points on the pillar one. I think it was a bit fuzzy also for myself, and I think you brought a lot of clarity and made it applicable for me, and I can see it, and so it makes a lot more sense than previously. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for that, for bringing that clarity.
That's no problem. That's why we're here, guys. And that's why it's important that we gotta talk this thing, right? Reading it, you ain't gonna get it. I'm telling you, like, I've been in this space for well over, let me see, 10 plus, at least 12 to 15 years, guys. Like, it ain't easy. So the fact that nobody asks questions, that is scary, right? So Darcy dropped the note. Guys, take note in the chat so you could set up the WhatsApp group. I don't have to be in it. You can share your views. Everybody could do their thing. If you want to put me in it, I don't have a problem. I don't have an objection to that. So again, just use the chat group for the purposes of what it is intended, right? You want to be able to every day immerse yourself, literally 10, 15 minutes, just risk management. And again, I'm not saying you pull up a textbook from risk management. No, notice, I'm talking about all kinds of different subject matters, and risk management applies to it. Donald talked about it earlier. It applies to everything. So you need to read the newspaper. You need to read daily articles. I'm going to be sending you some information, Economist, Bloomberg. I want you to just immerse yourself, just read. Don't try to look for something like you study it, because when you do that, you don't really learn it. It's almost like you're just doing it to pass a test, right? What we want to do is we want to change behavior. And so the value of your inputs, when you do it and how you do it, is going to change the dimension and dynamics of everything that you do. So I'm not saying to you after this course, okay, go and apply to be a risk manager. No. So earlier I would have spoken about the risk management profession and the risk management designation. And if we truly leverage what Donald said, every role that you have across your institutions, right? Whether you are at BOB, where according to BOB, you can live your best life, right? At central bank, where they want to talk about financial inclusion, buoyancy, soundness, and approaches. You got IRCA, keep your light on, organize yourself, otherwise we can step in. Scotia, Helga just running things. So we ain't gonna worry about that. We got some kids in the house. Kenisha, hey, you all right?
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm okay. Thank you.
All right, all right. Hey, I've been there before. Whoa. And then we got St. Lucia, Shonda in the house. Shonda, you want to say something to me? Talk to me. Drop a line. There's a Shonda here. Shonda, okay. We're gonna move right along. We got Jessica bringing up the new. You know, when people say today, just the new. So Jessica is emergent. That's what we do it. RBC, Galen. Did I pronounce that right? Okay, so RBC may not be here right now. You got Randy, credit union specialist. Whoop. Randy, you fix your things yet? Organize yourself.
I think I'm good now.
That's the Randy I know. Good stuff, Randy. Indira. We get the offshore banks. Man, listen, you all have this is a powerful group. I could take over. Like what the people say, you ain't get it.
Yeah, Commonwealth Bank in house too.
When see, I was leaving the best for last, right? You hear Commonwealth Bank now.
Hold on now, hold on.
Listen, you know, I have to be non-partisan. Obviously, for those that may not know, I am the Vice President and Chief Risk Officer at Enterprise Risk at Commonwealth Bank. So I won't leverage that title, but I will recognize Ms. Candice Roberts, who is one of the most, you know, she has done so much in the risk management space. It is unbelievable. So guys, like you will be amazed. And again, I could talk about Roberts because I did Roberts. I'm glad to have all of you. You know, I want us to have not an engaging discussion on regional and global perspectives, but how do we truly apply this thing, right? Like, let's make sense. Let's make sense. Risk management can help you make sense of what you're doing now in your discipline, whether it's risk, compliance, legal, accounting, wealth management, I mean, IT, investments, whatever it may be. And we're taking it a level above. Because why? You know the beauty of transitioning from being an auditor? Let's say, for example, when you go into another discipline, because you know what the auditor looking for, you actually will ensure quality of your reports or assessments, right? If you were to be, if you're a legal person and you are transitioning to a new discipline, you know how to design policies, you know how to address language, communications, you know how to support reputational risk and measuring risk, and like you are already doing that. So that's what this Basel thing about, right? And that's why I have it on the screen, because you got to prepare yourself for the review. like place Basel within your organization and understand that the risk manager sits in second line of defense, right? So we're going to get to that a little later in more depth. This is just more of a session one refresh, bringing you into alignment so that we can really stimulate the next level, right? So pillar three, we talked about it. And this is, and again, this is all Basel 1. This is, we calling the Basel 4. Guys, this Basel 1 and 2. We talking about Basel 4. Basel 4 goes into counter-cyclical buffers and recovery planning and disaster preparedness and resolution address, right? And like Basel 4, Basel 3, Basel 4, between net stable funding, liquidity asset management, HQLAs, which is high quality liquid assets, and really all of the disciplines which have to qualify disclosures. Basel 3, Basel 4 is all about risk management. It is all about it. But I look at it, yes, you evolve from value at risk, and then you transition to value of opportunity. So welcome, everyone. Now, as it relates to timing, I would recommend that we get as much as we can. We will touch point, let's say 8:15-ish, just to see perhaps maybe like 7:38-ish, because I want to get depth of questions, because the quality of your questions often is symmetrical to the quality of your reading. And I want to use much of our last 30 minutes to really either recap, realign, or just sort of address any inquiries so that we could bring it home, right? And then if we want to take it further, I would not want to take it beyond 9 o'clock. But what I would say is get the most out of it. Get the most out of it, because based on the level of your engagement, I can already tell that you're going to pass the class. My main concern is, are you going to be able to apply discipline? That's my main concern. So before we continue, any other questions? Any observations?
Will you go over the paper tonight, the assignment?
Nope, not tonight. So relative to the assignments, I have modules 3 and 4 with you. So we're gonna be together for about 6 weeks. Your assignment is due, and from my understanding, I think it's July 7th, July 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I would say is we can go over some concepts starting next week. I want to stimulate your thoughts. Then the last class of market risk, is where we can take it another level. Then the first class of liquidity risk, or module 4, I would like everyone to have their drafts prepared, because then we have one more week to really tidy it up. So read the assignment, let's figure out approaches, and then perhaps we can really align our engagement in the context of the assignment. Sounds like a plan? Where's Helga?
I'm still here.
Is that good for you? 'Cause
Yeah.
okay. Everybody good?
Sounds good.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, yes.
All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Now. So we touched a whole lot. Well, firstly, there are no calculations on the exam, right? And so the different approaches to calculations for the purposes of Basel, you wanna be mindful of the approaches, right? Advantages, disadvantages. A lot of what I'm sharing on the page right now, the different criterias, key indicators. So all of this is important, much of which you are familiar with, but you're looking at it with a risk perspective.
Question, is what you're sharing a part of the manual? Or
This is the manual.
first one?
Yeah, you should have this. Does everybody have this?
Okay.
Yes, it's in the manual.
Yeah, this is the manual. Where's compliance? Darcy, you gotta sort out. You gotta sort out Rich hand, really, Rich hand, sort it out. Rich needs some things going on right now.
No, man, I get the manual. Just at that quick glance, it didn't look familiar.
Okay. That means you want to read it?
No, he's straight, man. He's straight. He's straight.
All right. See now, your business is commotional. You ain't reading, you ain't know, like looking out. What you saying to me? This module 1. What you talking about?
Yeah, it is, boy.
You know how long module 1 is.
Let's do this thing, man. Let's do this thing. Okay. So, all right. So, you know, I am demonstrating on the page here. We have the concepts here. So much of this we really talked about. When I started talking about the risk-rated approaches, that's more in alignment with the basic indicator. The standardized approach, this went into the different business segments, right? If you do not apply this, if you're not someone that works in finance or treasury, this will sound like or look like a foreign language. My perspective here is nice, healthy reading unless it is relevant for you, right? Let's just appreciate that there are 3 approaches. Right now, the Bahamas uses the basic indicator approach. So it's a gross income approach for calculating operational risks, which has the impact on capital. Most of what we have in the Bahamas does not have an impact on market risk. So there's ops, market, credit, right? So we got ops. So we're using basic indicator. We have very little market. I mean, we know what's happening with this fix, very little movement there. And then you have credit, right? And we know largely what happens in the credit space, right? So this is just nice reading. Let's go through this. And everybody has the manual, right? So who doesn't have it? This is just a note for Miguel. Miguel, could you just perhaps maybe resend it to those? I'm sure they will reach out to you after the class. So let's do that. So we talked about the pillars. So as you can see, pillar 2 is about sound risk management systems and controls. But we know that aspect of it is textbook. What we want is the business application value added for proposition. So it's value opportunity. You want to go beyond value at risk and some of the other measurement approaches, right? This is when you get into, pillar 3. This talks about the disclosure. So we mentioned, all the actuaries, the accountants, they all have these voluminous disclosures now. They're telling you everything. IFRS 9 says, tell me everything what I need to know, right? And so what they're doing is capital, risk exposures, risk assessment, adequacy, management judgment, everything that you can think about. Right? So based on the impact of your business, they want to know what's going on, right? So this is some healthy reading here. A lot of the Basel papers, I would encourage you to read those. So that's good. We did talk about capital buffers. So this is, again, really looking at calibration of capital framework. And I would not encourage you to read this unless you are ready to do so. So I'm going to skip over that. So you should have had these slides, right? The framework. So we talk about SORC, human strategic operations, reporting, and compliance. Let's move along before Darcy takes control. We don't want to do that. But I want you to look at the cube here, right? And this is from the COSO integrated framework. This is important. Objective setting, internal environment, event identification, risk assessment, risk response, control activities, information and communication, monitoring. Sounds familiar, right? Yes? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah, man.
Yes, sounds familiar. It's very familiar.
Okay, great. So this is going to transition into your quadrant. The quadrant is reflected in your module 3, right? So let's go there. Let's go there. There we go. Okay. All right. Your quadrant, right? So you can see if you're going into your risk identification, measurement, monitoring, treatment, etc. And notice there is a constant looping. It doesn't unloop, right? So this is what people mean when they say it's dynamic, right? And notice, neither of it's a cyclical process, and you want to always have it in the clockwise position. And clockwise because it's really just synonymous for continuous movement, moving forward, etc. So risk management is about building, right? If you look at the quadrant closely, what you'll also see is there's a little square here, right? And if you almost sort of visualize in a 3-dimensional view, the square is like the pillars that support the roof of the Basel framework. So when you transition from the Basel framework, you then come to the enterprise risk management quadrant. So now I'm taking the COSO framework, the ISO 31000 framework, and I'm giving it to you in business domains: business risk, investment risk, legal, ops. So we talked earlier about capital, alignment of interest, board structure, policy, procedures, reputational concerns, stability of capital, and what's most important, human infrastructure, the key people. So this is your business risk. This is the dynamic that starts it off. Why is that important? Because that's where you identify the risk reward dynamics, the balance, an integrated approach of balance. So I want to take that integrated approach of balance to do what? I need to look at my assets. I need to determine what is my market opportunity exposures, HQLAs, how do I leverage? How do I diversify? Do I have any operational vulnerabilities, any concerns that I need to take into account from a value at risk or value of opportunity? Then I need to think to myself, if I'm going to do this thing, as I identify, I need to measure. How do you measure? Do I have people, processes, systems? Do I have the proper architecture to scale? Do I have the ability to offer? So I need to look at my controls, my processes, my systems. Because the reality is this. Yes, you want to prevent fraud, but taking it further, you want to create prevention, detective, control, IT general control structures that support risk-based decisions. Follow the quadrant: identification, measurement, right? You want to assess the controls. So what are we saying? It's going bad. There's a corrosive element. Something happened. It messed up. So the first element is, hey, I need to go to my legal and compliance. I need to go to risk. I need to understand what is concentration. Do we have adequate documentation? Where's my financial stability? Do I have buoyancy? Do I have the ability to leverage risk transfer? Do I have insurance? Do I have any legal or regulatory basis that covered the constructs of my business design? So then as I go phase one, I then continue. Now I could evolve from architecture to now value proposition. I have the systems in place now. I have the legal backing. So now I go back to my board. I go back to my, okay, guys, let's talk to Jessica because we need to talk about emerging markets. Now we want to look at how do we leverage the learning curve? What is the context of our environment? What is the ability of us to transition? What kind of working capital do we have? And again, this is all in the context of what you do and how you do it. So before I go any further, are there any questions? Are we connected? I had a indicator go up just now.
Okay, you.
Okay, so everybody's good. All right.
So far, yeah, so far so good.
So far, so good. All right, now let's talk. Let's talk.
Hi.
So, Hi, you have a question, Indy?
Yeah, yes, I do. How is concentration and documentation tied to legal and compliance risk?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Did anybody else hear?
Concentration and documentation, how is it tied to legal and compliance risk?
I can give that one to Jessica. Between Jessica and Darcy, I give that one to them.
So, and Darcy, I need you to jump in here with me. So the documentation risk, Darcy, you want to jump in here with me? Help me out? Give me a pass.
Darcy said you don't support me.
My fellow
Okay.
compliance.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question? I was trying to create the WhatsApp group. What was the question again? Sorry. How does documentation risk
And the concentration risk assist is a compliance and legal risk.
Oh, I didn't follow that. How does, say it again one more time for me?
How
concentration
and documentation, how is it tied to legal and compliance risk as shown in the diagram?
So let's leverage Candice. Candice, you want to share any views here?
So I'll approach it from this aspect, documentation, with regards to compliance. Compliance is all about complying with something. What is that something? That something is what legislation, that something would be the guidelines coming from the regulator, that something might be your internal policies and procedures. And all of these things are spoken to, speaks to documentation that may or may not be required as per that legislation, as per that guidelines, as per that procedure. That's from a documentary perspective. Jessica, I don't know if you want to jump in from the concentration side.
I was hoping that you would take that one too. I think I also agree with you, the documentation. I'll add another nugget on that. And it's probably more of a micro level where, you know, compliance and legal, I mean, you know, from us working in compliance, it's all about documentation, making things, you know, everything's in black and white, policies, procedures, anything that can basically come back and bite you in the hip. And so I think that's how we can tie that there. The concentration, I can't seem to put my hand on it, but while I throw a line to someone else, I want to add to that is the reputation. I guess I don't know. These are all intertwined, and it's cyclical. It's cyclical, and they kind of all merging together. I think, but somehow I thought, or I assumed rather, that reputation risk would have been captured under legal and compliance. While it is a business risk, I somehow I thought it would be captured there also. That's just, yeah. But concentration, I don't think, I can't seem to put my finger on that one.
Wouldn't concentration, just let me try my hand. Wouldn't concentration be related to the industry and I guess the type of business and or the exposure? So I would imagine it would be under the legal and compliance quadrant, because again, they would reiterate the level of exposure and coverage that the bank may want and or need as per the particular industry. So for example, if how do you say that? Tourism is big for the Bahamas, right? And in tourism, there are particular industries or business natures that may have certain inherent risks. So from the compliance standpoint and the legal standpoint, I'm assuming they would give the bank certain guidance and protection to say, hey, we don't want to increase exposure as a result of these risks for this particular industry. I don't know, just trying my hand here.
If I could add, from a regulatory standpoint, because when you are concentrated in a certain, as Whitman would have said, once you're concentrated in a certain industry, your risk exposure is going to go up if something goes wrong within that industry. And so from a regulatory standpoint, they would want to make sure that banks are keeping tabs on the industries that they are in so that they are monitoring the risks that could impact them within that environment. Now, in terms of the tie-in from legal and compliance, I look at it as failure to meet your compliance risk results in legal risk. And so from where I sit, concentration risk is a risk where you don't want to be too heavily in one place, because if a loss occurs, your loss is going to be amplified. And documentation, I think, was adequately explained already.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Donald just said, I just want to add this small little piece. I would believe, I think, in the regulatory space, when you're talking about investments and securities and all of that, I think, and Jermaine, you could help me here if nobody else jumps in. I think there is outline requirements within particular legislation that expects or demands a certain level of diversification to prevent the downfalls of the past. And I would look at more so the international legislation with regard to the mortgage markets and the crashes that was experienced in the United States.
Right. So on a monthly basis or quarterly in some instances, the bank has to report on their exposure in certain areas. So central bank wants to know who are your large customers. What's your exposure level to them? What's your exposure level to those companies or clients? And so in the Bahamas, I think we're heavily regulated, believe it or not. Central bank is on the banking sector case often. I'm trying to make sure the industry remains strong. And so a lot of things that the banks are able to do would have to comply with the central bank's mandate. And when you don't, I think Williams could tell me how long ago, but the central bank actually penalized the bank. So if you don't comply, they will actually fine you a fee and tell you bring it into compliance. And so I think in terms of the whole regulatory framework, the risk element has increased significantly, I think over probably the last 7-8 years, because before that, the central bank really was not as active in fining, levying penalties, but now they do. That's just my
Okay, thank you. I get it.
So that was a healthy discussion surrounding that question.
Jermaine, how much you get? 80%, 85, 95%? How much you get just now?
And bonus points.
What'd you say? How much you give yourself? How much did you self-assess?
How much I give myself? I'm kind of fair. I'd say 88%.
So I would say this. I take note of the discussion and I recognize what is being shared. And a lot of it has a tremendous amount of value to support the risk management discipline. The context of it still touches on the traditional or conventional regulatory standard control environment approaches, concepts. And so me, while I do know the diversity of perspective, right? And I say that, of course, in addition to what I've shared, the context here is about a continuous evolution of risk management as a discipline and the concepts in this quadrant. Any variable within this text or within this quadrant can move off the quadrant because it is proportionate to the risk. The easy approach or the standard approach from the evolution of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which really brought light to risk management since 2003 in the earlier years, looks at the direct correlations to bring about an assessment of design, controls, control effectiveness, and alignment of regulatory, legal, and best practices. Then you have the ISO 31000 and COSO frameworks, which looks at the concepts in a little bit more depth to the viewpoints of what we shared earlier, which is why I asked if everyone was okay. Because what you will find is if you truly understood modules 1 and 2, this would have been a heavily concentrated and comprehensive discussion just on this quadrant alone. The quadrant transitions from COSO and ISO into the integrated approach, which is the foundation of Basel III, Basel IV. And it really talks about how do you calibrate risk reward. So you go into quantitative and qualitative attributes. You look at key person. When I think about key person today, this is about streamlining of job functions, functional roles and responsibilities, succession planning, business continuity, recovery and resilience. And that's just one variable. Then you go into the investment life cycle. So it's on the business as well as it's on the human infrastructural element of it. Then still with key person, we're talking about the cost to serve. What is the dollar value of resource when I factor in my variable on cost to serve a product or service to my customer? How do I value every dollar of input, administrative system, which systems are often amortized over a period of time, when I open a bank account, the number of documents that need to be signed, the amount of review that takes place, the assessment that goes into it, where are my risk reward dynamic associated with key persons? When I think about systems, operational resilience, disaster recovery, disruption, yes. What are my key, what key individuals and critical business systems would be needed to support the resilience of the operations? Take it further. Am I going to look at the value proposition of my balance sheet? Am I looking at risk-weighted income distribution? I am concentrated here and I see more interest income as my line item, and there's opportunity for fee income. But when I look at the inverse relationships or the correlative components, how does that factor in cost to serve when I look at net ROI or net stable income generation context on key business segments? So if I dissolve, what does that mean for my business from the customer segment, scale, business plan, strategic focus, capital, all of my pillars? What does that mean for learning curve of either new and emerging markets? What does that mean for me focusing on what I do well? If we think about the Apple concepts, when they were doing all of, they were exploring into all kinds of products and services, and then they literally and just simply said, we are focusing on what is customer facing with the smallest microchip, hence the granularized view of risk, supply chain. Where am I going to get the supplies from to support the risk and to support the business and that key person?
So Jermaine, can I ask this question?
Right.
And
If
it
we
might be
just
a loaded question. Sorry.
Dovetailing to concentrations. Are we looking at geography? Are we looking at cross-border implications? Are we looking at
Hello?
Hello, is that me
It looks
or
like
everybody
he,
else?
Yeah.
We have lost him.
I
can hear
think
you.
you have
Yeah, we lost you for a second.
guys? I think I'm back. Are we good?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we went out. We went out. Where did I get cut off? Hello?
I think you was mentioning supply chain. I think that was the last thing I heard. I don't know if I dropped.
Okay. So ultimately, right? What I would say is I think this is a great opportunity for us to segue into our salutation for the evening. Let's take this as, of course, some homework. Let's look at modules 1 and 2. See if you can get some coverage. And as I indicated earlier, let's look at the assignment. I will also send some information via email. I think Miguel would have shared, would have provided me with everyone's email. And we will pick it back up next week so that we can provide some clarity of context. So the objective for tonight is you have a very strong foundation. And I want to encourage you to level it up. So the only thing that we're going to focus on when we meet is the concept of just leveling it up. So we can walk away, perhaps not all answers or questions answered, but rather an enhanced perspective on what you already do and what we will learn as we go along. Right? So for the first night, I think this is a good place for us to take a pause, just 1 and 2, go over the assignment, and you should expect some communication from me. Any questions, just general observations before we close?
This is a good discussion.
Yeah, this is one of the better classes.
I think that I'm
Yeah,
understanding it much better now. I think that I'm understanding it much better now.
I appreciate the request and practical element you introduced to it, and pushing us towards making it more practical to ourselves in our own real world.
I approve that message with Darcy.
Jessica. Okay, I think I got cut off, guys. Again, not sure what's happening here.
What's the last thing you heard?
But I heard Jessica approving your message.
Okay, you heard everything.
Okay. All right, guys. So let's have a great night. Don't be a stranger. You guys should be linking up WhatsApp, Facebook, LinkedIn, do the thing, guys, and let's take it next level. Okay, let's take it next level. St. Kitts, St. Lucia, welcome. It's a pleasure having everyone here. I trust that we will continue our journey with modules 3, transitioning into 4. And after 4, you will have 2 more modules, and then you will be ready for your exam. First touch point, assignment, let's get that under the belt, and we'll be in good shape. So pleasantries to all. My email is available if you have any direct questions. Certainly reach out to Miguel if there's any material that you would not have been provided. And please look out for some communications from me in short order. If I do not hear from any of you, I trust that you will enjoy the remainder of your evening, your last working day tomorrow, and certainly your holiday weekends. Be safe, guys. Read 15 minutes a day. That's all. You want to take it further? All power to you. Great. Let's just continue this journey all the way to the end and level up. Have a good evening, guys.
Good night. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
All right, take care.